Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Gibson, and I'm joined today by the business building legend, Zack Bartell. Zack, how you doing?
I'm good, man. That's way too kind of an intro.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's gonna be a great chat. It's. I think these are the conversations that the like weightlifting, powerlifting, strength sport, S&C space probably wouldn't get that often. Because I think we're all so focused on being in the business and working on our coaching and programming and processes that improve performance, that when we kind of pull back and get out of that frame, we're like, man, the business side of things, like that should be addressed in some capacity too. And, maybe people who have physical locations deal with this more obviously and more consistently. People who are in the online space, probably less so, but I think they're both opportunities to build a sustainable business that can, one, like provide the person who built it with a salary, but provide other people with salary. So I thought it'd
100%.
be a great opportunity to discuss the business side of things, building a remote coaching business or coaching business, and just kind of, deep diving into your expertise and getting a sense of, how you've been able to be so successful in building your own business, but helping people build others.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times we get into this because we're passionate about the sport, and then you reach a certain level and you realize that business acumen is fairly important if you want to create the lifestyle around the passion. And so yeah, I spend a lot of time helping people do just that.
Yeah. And I think at some level too, depending on where you're at, you need to know enough, but knowing more with respect to programming and coaching probably provides very marginal returns. But then knowing enough about business, to effectively market what you do know, I think provides a way bigger return than saying, well, I can get you another kilo on your squat or bench or snatch. It's like, yeah, that's great, but that's not gonna inherently pay the bills. But having a good sense of business or having someone come on who has a good sense of the business side of things can support that understanding and allow you to take advantage of it. So I guess like the most obvious question, and this is one that people probably uh, would need to know to then trust your expertise, is how did you get into this in the first place, and like what have you been able to do along?
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. So, just I'll kind of give the backstory. I'll try not to take up an hour. No, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, just quickly. So, I grew up overweight, and I played sports because my mom would throw me in sports because she wanted me to lose weight my whole life. And it wasn't until playing football that like being big, quote unquote, was like a good thing. And in football, actually, I found the weight room. And I remember specifically there was a time where I had some friends who were going into freshman football. I was actually still in eighth grade at the time, and we all bench pressed in my buddy Ethan's garage, and I benched more than all of them. I think I benched like 185 pounds or something like that, and I was not even 14, and it was the first time I had like positive feedback from like some sort of exercise. Like throughout my whole life, you sprinting, running, all these other things, I was always the worst. And so lifting weights was the first time I was actually good at something physical. And as people were drawn towards the things we're good at. And so I just started living in the weight room, ended up losing like 60 pounds sophomore to junior year of high school. And, started competing in powerlifting my junior year and was benching, over 140 kilos
Hmm.
at 16 years old at the time. And so I started competing a bunch. I then realized, I wanted to be I thought I wanted to be a college football strength conditioning coach. You then sort of realize that that's a business of who you know, not what you know. And oftentimes you end up as the assistant strength coach for the, you know, pickleball team that doesn't exist back then, whatever, you know what I'm saying though. And I sort of with powerlifting figured out that like I wanted to coach powerlifting. And so I just started programming for friends for free. I then in college started working the front desk at Juggernaut, with Chad Wesley Smith, and I started coaching, some people. He didn't really have a coaching in-person setup there, and so I just started coaching some of the members, charging them like super low rates. I was on the floor, all evening. I'd go to, I did study kinesiology, so I'd go to the school from like 8 a.m. to noon. I'd drive 30 miles south. I'd then coach until like 8 p.m. And I'd try to drive home and get back to the the food hall before it closed so I could eat for free and then go to bed and do it again. So that's how it all began. Fast forward in 2007, Chad was closing down the physical location. His online business was taking off. I then had saved up some money. With $5,000, I was able to find a spot that would sublease me space on a revenue split. So I brought
Mm.
15 clients over. I gave them 60% of the revenue I would generate. So it was very low risk. And I started to build a roster and pretty much a gym at that point. Early on, after about a year, it started growing enough to where I needed to find my own location. Did that, and it just scaled from there. So, I mean, ultimately, you know, where we're at now. So we're talking about SoCal Powerlifting. We're 7 years, 8 years in about. And we do over seven figures a year. I have a full-time team. They have their W-2, they have health insurance, they have benefits. We have 400 clients in total. So there's obviously been a lot of things that have led to that growth and change over the long term, but that's pretty much the story of just a kid who liked training, liked powerlifting, wanted to figure out how to make his passion something that could pay for his lifestyle, and it's gone further than I ever imagined it ever go.
Yeah, that's a really powerful story. I'm sure people are getting like super juiced up hearing it.
Good. Yeah.
From the standpoint of relating to the impact that training has had, lifting weights has had on their own self-perception and kind of like life direction. I mean, if people are listening to this like niche esoteric weightlifting, powerlifting, sports science podcast, they're probably pretty involved and invested and they love it quite a bit. So obviously it's had an impact on them. So hearing you kind of recount that, I'm sure people are like, man, I remember the first time I was in high school or college or post college and I started lifting weights and either realized I was really bad at it, really good at it, hated it or loved it, but the relationship changed, across time to where it's something they do as a full-time coach or full-time business owner or something they do as someone who trains full-time. You mentioned Chad Wesley Smith, and I think the first person you kind of mentioned by name, and a lot of the listeners should be pretty familiar with Juggernaut. What kind of impact, beyond just kind of giving you a platform, like an opportunity to work at JTS, did he have? Was it because I would imagine seeing Chad, and this is probably how a lot of people feel, like, man, he built something insanely successful, such high quality. It was so comprehensive, educational content. It was, producing the best athletes in weightlifting and powerlifting, and then diversifying that. So I think Chad did everything really, really well. At least that's how it seems. So what kind of impact did he have on you as you were coming up in a space?
Yeah, I mean, Chad was just an amazing mentor, someone I'm proud to still call a friend. We're actually neighbors. He lives 5 doors down from me, and he was always willing to answer my questions. I think he just saw potential in me that maybe I didn't see in myself quite yet. And like an example of that was like there was a time in which we were at the gym. So at the time I was working Juggernaut. I would work at NutriShop on the weekends sometimes. I would then also work at Iron Rebel in the warehouse. So I was always trying to grind and make money. Like I've always kind of been like a little bit of a hustler, like wanted to, make money. And I was never like the smartest person. So I was going to school, but I knew like I wasn't like a student. I guess that's the best way to put it. And so there was a time where Chad was actually restructuring how Juggernaut operated the warehouse and the gym, and he actually kind of like fired me, but he fired me with this idea. What he told me is like, dude, like he pretty much told me the job that I was doing was below me in my potential. And he saw what I was doing with my own coaching business at the time, where it didn't really have a name. It's just like Zack Bartell Powerlifting Coaching or whatever. And he's like, just keep doing that, keep doing that, do more of that. And just that, even that positive affirmation pushed me. But yeah, really, I mean, the exposure. Like I remember when I was like 18, he flew me with his team to the Arnold and I worked his booth. I got to meet, Matty Rogers and like all these people who were just incredible athletes, and just get exposure to those athletes and see what it's like to run a business at a higher level and what success could really look like. And so it was huge to kind of get those impressions early on. It sort of paints a roadmap of what's possible. And I think then pushed me to continue to invest in like my growth and my expertise and lean on him. And he was, again, always willing to answer any questions I had. Even after I opened my gym and left his because he closed down, he was always willing to get on the phone or meet with me, get coffee, and I could, ask him questions, lean on him. And he helped me navigate some tough times, really early on. And I'm super grateful for his mentorship.
Yeah, it sounds like he had a tremendous impact, and I mean, it's hard not to have an impact when you are able to accomplish what he did. You know, it's kind of how I feel, looking up to Max as someone who's developed, elite athletes in weightlifting and powerlifting. And it's funny you even mentioned that. Like, I texted Max, I think it was on Sunday. I'll text him all like frequently, but it's
Yeah,
something like, "Hey, do you coach people to heave the bar in the bench press? Do you coach people to like dip the bar into their chest? Do you?" It'll be like those random like programming questions or technique questions, and he's more like he loves talking about it. If anything, if we were in person, it'd probably end up as like a 5 hour conversation over
absolutely.
an americano in a cafe somewhere. So it's a similar relationship, and he's been able to kind of help me guide like my thing about training, and like offer me a lot of other great experiences too. So kind of hearing you talk about that, the turnaround from like you being kind of like in Juggernaut and close to Chad, and then you starting your own thing. That was sounds like a pretty fast transition.
Yeah.
What was that like? I guess getting kind of like dumped into the deep end of running your own business, having a facility, and trying to make that transition into not just being a good powerlifting coach, but being someone who could sustain a business centered around coaching powerlifting.
Yeah, so one of the things actually, and it's, good you mentioned Max. So, obviously Max had moved down there and was coaching. And so Max actually coached me for a couple of years as well in powerlifting. We got very close. And he had hired me to help him with some of his online coaching business stuff, like, some emails here and there and stuff on the sales side back then. So we developed a good relationship. And one of the things Max told me when I was talking to him about opening a gym was that the gym is an expense for the coaching. And those words still to this day ring true. And the idea, so going into opening my own gym, I was first and foremost always focused on building a coaching brand and business with a gym. We're a coaching business with a gym, not a gym with coaches. Because you walk into a lot of gyms these days where you go in and then yeah, there's some coaches roaming around, but it's more of an open gym format, and maybe the coaches coach a little bit, but there's no like true structure. So from the get go, because of Max's advice, I was like, okay, we need to. It was just me at the time, so not we. I need to focus on coaching. And that's what I did. And so I was able to build my coaching roster up to 68 clients myself. A lot of Sundays programming, a lot of, programming coaching all day. But ultimately I centered it around myself. And I didn't really think about it being bigger than me until I reached a point where I was like, I don't think I can take on more clients. I was burning out. I didn't have time to give the clients the services that I promised. I didn't feel like I was delivering on my promises and fulfilling the service to the at least the degree in which I felt it should be done. And that's when I started to think about, okay, what does it look like if I hire other coaches? How do I build that out? And what does that look like? And so that's really how it all started. As far as gym stuff, in the beginning, it was like my thought process was, okay, let's just get some combo racks in here. It was really easy to build a powerlifting gym in my area because we didn't have a lot of competition. I was like the first one. There was one other one that was like kind of more grungy, old school, and so I had a different type of client, demographic. I from the get go, I was trying to like be the Equinox of powerlifting, like the nicer powerlifting gym, and we still to this day I feel that way. But it was mainly just focused on delivering the best coaching, and even if I didn't have the best equipment, it's like the coaching and the community will make people stay, and that's what we were able to do early. And so yeah, it really was a solo thing until I reached a point where I couldn't do it myself anymore, and then I started looking at, okay, what do I need to do to hire and bring on other coaches? What does that look like? And I started sort of diving into those new territories.
Yeah, and obviously along the way you learn a lot just by necessity, right? You mentioned, I kind of reached capacity. There's no way I could bring on more clients. So I need to figure out how to expand the business from an employee standpoint. And we're kind of talking about people who have big influences on us, and Seb, my buddy from Weightlifting House, like I kind of look at him because I've known him since 2017. So I knew him from, him starting a podcast, which is how the business started. So it was a podcast. He started with Glenn Pendlay at the time, and they just recorded episodes. And the way he diversified that and made it into something that was profitable was to sell a t-shirt. So he sold the t-shirt, and then he sold a barbell. So he sold a barbell, and then he wrote a book. So he sold a book, And then he started to then develop it and think about like, where can I source products from? So he went on Alibaba and started like sourcing like t-shirts and thumb tape and all these other products, and then started to grow the business that way. And then it was in 2019, we were in California. So he flew out to San Francisco. We did this like California tour, and he was going to go from San Francisco to Thailand and film at Worlds. So he went to Worlds, filmed. That was like his first time doing weightlifting media. And then from that point on, the business just changed and morphed to now, it's got a handful of employees, probably 8 to 10. Same idea, able to offer like salaries and take care of them and keep everyone kind of embedded in weightlifting. And the way it starts is so just, it almost doesn't make sense. And it's a lot of trial by fire, basically. But the thing that I noticed about him is his interest moved from studying and understanding the intricacies of weightlifting and human performance to all he reads and listens to really is business and like marketing
Yeah.
and the X's and O's of that. So now he's basically taught himself to become an expert and basically done like a, some like MBA and business really. And it was kind of out of necessity. So from your standpoint, when you think about your journey as someone who started a business and then started growing it, did you ever kind of, I guess, like lean away from just direct experience and trial and error and look at, okay, how can I educate myself to understand business a bit more like high level than just being in the trenches and saying like, I probably need another employee. I should probably start to, build things out differently. Like, did you ever formalize that process?
Yeah, I mean, so really early on in 2018, late 2018, we were doing pretty well. So I was generating about, I had like 3 months in a row where I generated about like eight to 9K a month in revenue. And it was getting to the point where I was like, okay. And that's where I was kind of starting to bottleneck a bit. And the bottleneck was me, my knowledge or lack thereof. And so I hired a business coach, and she was $1,500 a month. But I just did it, I ripped it, and let's go. And through working with her, someone who had experience with multiple locations, lots of successes, lots of failures, I was able to learn the tools and tactics that I needed, the principles that I needed to apply to grow the business to supersede just me. And I'm a big believer in education. I think education can give you tons of infinite leverage. Even if you're not winning in the short term, even if you're not generating more revenue, you're stacking you're stacking knowledge and expertise that can be deployed at some point in time when the opportunity hits. And we may not know when that opportunity will be, but we're preparing for it. And I'm a big believer in that. And so that was probably the most formal thing I did when it came to business acumen at the time. And even working under her, she helped me scale within 3 years from 8K a month to 70K months.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she helped a ton. And yeah, I think it's funny, right? Because as coaches, we believe so much in coaching, and we believe that every if you're a weightlifting coach, you believe that every weightlifter should have a coach. Mm, Now, as a business owner, I believe the same thing. Every business owner should have a mentor or business coach, and it should be a formal relationship. It's not enough just to have a buddy. It wasn't enough for me just to have Chad. Chad was great, but it wasn't a formal business mentorship. It's finding a formal mentorship that you're going to treat with the utmost care. We know this. We know that, like, for example, when we have a client who we've all had a client who we gave like free programs to or whatever, and they don't complete the program. There's no accountability because there's no buy-in, there's no risk on their end. It's the clients that pay that they're like, I need to either use this and do this because I'm paying for it, or I need to quit.
Mm. Yeah.
I think with the same goes for business mentorship and coaching. And so that's what I did. And I started to learn that, service-based businesses. So anyone, this could apply to coaching. This could apply to even like I've coached like massage therapists, meal prep companies, service-based business. Same rules apply. It's just learning the rules of the game. And so I was able to start to build those things. And then over time, I've done a ton in terms of mentorship. I'm part of I'm on the board of Entrepreneurs Organization in Orange County. It's a global organization, so there's chapters all over the world where I'm in a bunch of mentorship cohorts, and there's continuing education and things like that. And so I've tried to continue to build my repertoire of business experience and acumen, learning from people that have done 100x more than me, sitting in rooms with entrepreneurs literally doing 9 figures in
Wow.
revenue annually. and asking just all of the questions and trying to absorb all of the knowledge. So I'm a big, I love to learn, and I'd never want to be the bottleneck of my own success.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That was really captivating. I think things speaks to your experience one developing your own business and being able to make it grow, but also pursuing support, pursuing education, supporting avenues of one developing the size of the bottleneck, right? Increasing its size so that it's less and less limited. So I think that again speaks to what you do. And one thing you mentioned before we started recording is you mentioned this idea of like first principles. And I think that holds, that holds in a lot of different ways. But when we think about training, sometimes, when I was like, I coached weightlifting and powerlifting. And before I started coaching strength and conditioning or getting into that side of the professional space, you think like consistency is like completely different, something like foreign and alien. And then you get in the weight room and you're like, oh, there's just more of a focus maybe on like speed of movement, like velocity of movement, and maybe like more variation, but it's all using barbells and dumbbells and weighted implements, and it's full ranges of motion, and it's focused on load. And it's like, okay, so what is it then? It's like, well, it's good training. It's good training that adheres to the principles that you use for weightlifting and for powerlifting. So when you talked about service-based businesses, and you talked about taking an expertise developed in the powerlifting space and being able to almost like make that like agnostic to the thing itself. It's like it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a barbell in a warehouse. It can be, a food truck, or it can be like a massage therapy business. That kind of resonated, and that was something that definitely stood out.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think we have a misconception operating in a very niche space that we operate in. A lot of owners have a misconception, or coaches have a misconception that there's just certain rules that apply to our space, and that's completely untrue. I think a lot of my wins in business, and a lot of I think I can think back on a few things that like were exponential growth levers that I learned from people in different sectors, and that's why I'm in mentorship groups now where there's no gym owners in my group. It's all people in different sectors that I'm learning from, and I'm applying those rules to our game and our niche, and they work. And so, looking outside of the box, once you get to a certain level, and you've let's say exhausted all of the things within the niche, you get to a certain level, you start to go, okay. You start looking around, and I'm like, well, there's no other gym owners that I know in my in my circle that are let's say doing the revenues that we're doing and what we have going on. And so I had to look outside the box to then even grow further. We always you hear the term like we're the sum of the average of the five people we hang around. And I think it's the same with
Yeah,
business. It's like if we're in the same rooms with the people doing the same thing, we're going to talk about the same shit. And so I'm a big believer in getting into new rooms as you grow, and like that's totally fine. And I say that humbly in the sense where it's like, look, there's gyms out there doing more in revenue than we do and things like that. But ultimately, I wanted to learn from people, doing 10x, and I don't know any gyms doing X or 100x. And so that's what I've at least tried to do as far as my own growth. And then the other thing too is I think it's getting really clear on what you as a coach or business owner and or both want out of life. If you want to coach forever, like there's nothing wrong with that. I realized early on I didn't. I had a knee surgery in 2018. It was pretty much like a biologic reconstruction. I used to dislocate my kneecap all the time playing wrestling and playing football, and so I just like had a really arthritic knee where I had to pretty much stop squatting. And post surgery, I never really could get back into it because I just had too much hip shift and all. Everything started to fall apart in my body. And so it sort of killed the passion a little bit. I love going all in on things. And with powerlifting, I didn't feel like I could keep going all in. And it kind of, you know, made me depressed and bummed me out, similar to like Max's wrist injury, like and how he handled that. He obviously stayed in the coaching space, but I didn't feel like that's where my passion was anymore. So my passion switched to how can I provide opportunities with my business as the vehicle for other people to grow and live the life they want to live. And that's today I focus first and foremost on my team and how I can ensure that they live the life and do the things that they want to do using our business as a vehicle to do so. And in doing so, then they provide the most outstanding client experience to our customer.
yeah, that's great. And the thing about Max is, I was actually listening to a podcast he did with one of the clients you have, Jared Richmond.
Yeah.
And Max, it always comes up. Max, how many times did he squat a day and for how
Yeah.
long? And it's like, oh, he squatted 8 times a day to a max for 8 years. And you talked about wanting to go all in, and you're like, similar to Max. It's like, yeah, Max does go all in.
Yeah.
He really dives head first and he stays there. As spoken to by weightlifting, powerlifting, and then obviously the business side of things. And I know I kind of mentioned this, and you said we could talk about it, but you've been working with Max for CoachLogik, the platform that Max has created to allow for more, hyper individualized, I don't like convenient, comprehensive coaching for, weightlifters, powerlifters, S&C professionals, pretty much anyone who's doing some sort of like physical programming or coaching or training. You can use that platform as a means of one, prescribing it, documenting it, analyzing it, and then just kind of having fun with it. So maybe I don't know if you want to use that as a case study necessarily, but maybe we can talk a bit more about CoachLogik and how that kind of like onboarding and
Yeah.
process helping a business grow, what
Well,
that
yeah.
looks like.
So with CoachLogik, it all comes down to, and I'm sure again, people who are listening to this are coaches, gym owners, business owners. And I'm sure the people listening to this are in a couple buckets. One of which is they're writing programs on spreadsheets, so sending them out to clients, and they're getting text feedback or WhatsApp feedback where they're getting video review and sending them feedback. So that's like the most like bare bones way of starting to coach. It's barrier to entry, low cost, and we just execute. And then you get to a place where you're maybe in the next bucket where you're like, okay, there's got to be a software platform out there where I can write programs, review videos, and give client feedback. So like I've been on the same software platform that Max told me about back in 2016. So we've been on the same platform for almost a decade. And Max had started building CoachLogik out and had hit me up about some sales stuff because I have a sales background in marketing. And I just jumped on the opportunity because I think that, from a business stance, for me at least, I've always wanted to dive into software.
Mm.
I'm not a programmer or developer. I don't care to build my own thing, but I love talking with people and helping people grow their businesses. And I saw CoachLogik as a platform to do so by making coaching more efficient, by providing the best product of coaching or service to the end user, to their client. So yeah, with CoachLogik, I mean, where we'll win is the way in which the platform is built. It's everything that Mac has hated about previous platforms and what it didn't do that we wanted, which was an actual efficient long-term plan or two, allowing clients to coaches to show their clients, what is the long-term plan, how is it all built up, how are we graphing, are we actually tracking data when it comes to volume and intensity, because all these other platforms, it's all text-based. And what that means is when you write a workout, let's say you're using a platform, we'll use TrueCoach for an example. You're using TrueCoach, you write out 5x5 or 3 sets of 2 on with this weight prescribed. There's no place where then that's going to track data of like
Mm.
what was actually done. You can go and click the history button and see, okay, maybe they did, you can only track by exercise. So you could see like, okay, they did this, 8 weeks ago. So then therefore we'll do that. But there's no place where that's being plotted on a graph or tracked in a more granular sense where a coach can actually leverage those tools to write better programs.
Mm.
And so that's the number one key. I mean, outside of that, the other cool things are obviously it's AI integrated, which means, we have a copilot in there where the AI can help you write skeletons of programs much faster and edit sets and reps and RPEs and weights. So it'll make your coaching more efficient. The goal is that we want you to take your coaching knowledge and deploy it faster and more efficiently. The hope is then you can coach more people with the same amount of service level of service, because you're having to click around less and write actual less when typing. You can just focus on the coaching aspect. You can tell the machine what you want and it spits it out for you. So the goal is here that the AI portion eventually, right now it's still in beta, but eventually it'll be to the point where it can do probably 80% of the work for you, and then you put on your 20% to polish it up and ensure that it's delivering what you want to the client. And then the last piece is just like video annotations. Like right now, as a gym owner, like my pain point is I have so many different software subscriptions for my coaches to deliver coaching, but the two big ones would be our coaching platform, that we've been using, and like Loom is one. So we use Loom videos to give client feedback via video. And so these are all separate subscriptions and stuff because there's no platform that has a built-in like video tool that with like annotation and things like that. So we have a video annotation tool where you can draw on the video, you can take screenshots, you can record yourself, you can put yourself in a little bubble at the bottom. So again, we're trying just to give coaches a platform to deliver the best coaching experience to their clients in hopes that they can grow their coaching business. So I invested in the platform. I'm going to be, I'm on with some of the sales stuff and marketing stuff, onboarding people, things like that, client experience. And my goal is that as a business coach too, I can leverage my expertise to help people using our platform grow their coaching businesses, because that's what we want coaches to do. We want more coaches to be able to live the lifestyle they desire. We're kind of trying to get out of to be a coach, you have to work your accounting job 9 to 5, and then you go coach in the evenings, or you do your side hustle online thing. Let's make the side hustle the main thing by giving you the tools to succeed. And that's what CoachLogik's going to be able to do.
Yeah, and I think shifting away, and I think this is probably what a lot of people would like, shifting away from that idea that it's like a forced 12-hour workday or a forced like 60-hour a week job. And in strength and conditioning, you probably hear about that a lot more, as like, oh, you're working insane hours, you work all the time. It's like the nature of athletics. Weightlifting, powerlifting, coaching probably shouldn't be similar to that, because the reason athletics is like that, we'll say collegiate athletics, is because of like class schedules, all the restrictions imposed by the university or the NCAA or whatever it is. So like that ends up creating a schedule. Plus the head coach says, plus all the other things layered on top of that, and you're like, yeah, that's just like insanity. For weightlifting and powerlifting, probably shouldn't be doing that, probably don't need to. And it's like, how do you create a system or a process that allows you for more efficiency with the same quality of service? So I think that's kind of what you're ultimately getting at.
Yeah, and even like I own a coaching business with 7 coaches who all have clients, and their pay is relatively, tied to their client load. And if I can get my coaches to coach more clients per coach, I can, and again, delivering the same outstanding service, but they can handle more because they have the right tools for the job, and we can streamline workflow. Now I can have coaches generate more revenue and they can make more money. And so I don't want the bottleneck of a coach within my organization, at least, to be the amount of clients they can handle based on lack of tools given to them. And so CoachLogik is going to be able to allow them to coach more people more efficiently, and them to make more money as coaches doing the thing they love, which is coaching. And so that's what got me really excited about the platform. And I think it's every coach that has been on it and used it has given us amazing feedback on it. I was obviously have a bias, but still, like, it's allowing them to do the things we've set out, for them to do, which is grow the coaching business. So, there's a lot of platforms out there that are like super, flashy and all this stuff, but again, they're not, actually giving the coaches the tools that the coaches need to grow their business, which is what the goal really, I think, should be, because all these coaches are business owners, or they're working in an organization where their income is tied to the amount of people they can coach efficiently.
Yeah. Well, and Max has a very unique perspective where he was remote coaching an insane number of people for a very long time, and coached just like an insane number of people for a very long time. He has the experience of like, what would I have wanted to be able to manage that, to be able to streamline it, make it as efficient and as effective as possible. And I think that's ultimately what led him down that like path of, okay, let's create a platform to do that. And he's one of the only people I'd say who was capable, the only person who's capable, given his background kind of in tech, being situated in the Bay Area, having remote coach so much, having coached at the highest levels, having coached for so long in person as well. Maybe that like uniquely privileged him in this place to be able to develop the business.
Yeah, there's a lot of again, platforms out there where it was just a software developer who was maybe a client at some point, and they wanted to build their own platform and sell it. And a lot of these developers just build it based on what they think needs to be done. We're building it based on what coaches actually need, because we're coaches. It's Max has so much coaching experience, so he knows what coaches want. We're listening to feedback on what coaches want. We're building it based on what the customers actually want, not what we think they want. And I think that's the key, and that's applies to owning a gym business, coaching business too. It's like, you can talk about all your bells and whistles and how cool your coaching is and how cool you are as a coach, but are you delivering the results the clients want? Are you providing the types of services they want? The best thing you can do is listen to your customer and let them tell you what they need, so that you're not trying to, make things up and end up adding a bell and a whistle that you think is cool, but actually your clients don't care about, and therefore it doesn't help you grow your business.
Yeah. So pivoting a little more to the, I don't know, maybe both perspectives could make sense, but the remote coaching space and then the in-person like business owner space. From a business coaching perspective, say someone comes on with you, how are you, so say people listening to the podcast, they reach out after the fact, they're like, Zach, I make this much money and I work all the time. I really would love to level up the business and increase revenue and streamline a lot of my work. So one, I can keep doing what I love and not feel like I'm on edge or unable to get clients in the door, unable to market myself effectively. So people come to you with some sort of problem. They want to grow their business. They want to make it more profitable and make their services more streamlined. How do you start? Like, how do you start by kind of conducting like a needs analysis of this is how much in revenue you produce. This is the size. This is the location. Like, what do you think about? I guess how do you start the process so we can start to flesh out what growing a business in coaching is going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, number one is understanding the individual's why. Does this person want to build a business that stands on its own 2 feet, that doesn't have their name on the billboard where they're the guy, and that they're coaching forever? Like, just so that's a key question. Is like, I always built SoCal Powerlifting as something that didn't have my name on it, where people didn't show up looking for Zach, they showed up looking for SoCal Powerlifting, so that it was a business that could carry on with or without me, wherever I was at in life. That was like my vision. So I always like to understand people's vision of what they want to create, what they want their lifestyle to be and look like, their day to day, understanding like their core values and again like what they want out of life, and then from there we work on creating that vision. And so it's I ask a lot of questions, but I mean, I try to first get a very deep understanding of the individual I'm coaching, and then get a very deep understanding of the current business and where it's at and where the bottlenecks are. I think that a lot of the bottlenecks, so I'd say most coaches, if they're, let's say, we'll go coach, gym owner, whatever. If you're doing, if you're a solo coach, solo operator, gym owner, you're probably doing around 10 to 15K a month. You probably max out around 15K a month in revenue. It's just a weird number where people just get kind of stuck there. It's like the first valley of death, I would call it, in the fitness industry. And usually that's an issue of, it's a people problem. So they get to 15K a month and they get to a point where they're like, okay, I can't grow this anymore because I don't have client capacity. I don't have capacity to take on more people. I'm just running out. I have no time. I'm burnt out. And so we start to look at, okay, hiring, like what would it mean to bring on another coach? But before we do that, we do need to look at the margins, and we do need to look at the finances and see, have we been charging enough to where there's a margin to actually pay someone to execute the service, or have we been undercharging and making more of a volume play where there's no room in the margin to build out what a coach is, compensation would even be within what we're charging. So we have to look at the offerings, we have to look at the margin, and then we have to look at like the structure. A lot of gym owners and again, coach in that sort of valley of death, they also lack structure when it comes to the memberships. They lack a sales, structure and pipeline and tracking and follow-up processes and all these things. So, when I start working with someone, everyone always wants to talk about sales and marketing. They think they have a marketing problem a lot of times too. And it's really, it could be, for sure, but I've worked with tons of people where we pull the marketing lever and all of a sudden we're getting more leads. And then, but we have clients just dropping off the same amount because we're not providing the best service, because we also haven't built those principles yet. So if someone has time and they're like not in a dire position of like, I need cash now, or like I need to fix this, or I'm going to like jump off a bridge, I try to build out the infrastructure and the operations first, and then pull the marketing and sales lever next, because I don't want to add clients to a business that's actually a glass house falling apart on the inside. And so I'd rather look internally, but people like the external, they want the revenue, they want it now. We want this instant gratification. So I try to coach in a way where we look at infrastructure and ops first, make sure we have a sustainable business. If not, there's lots of levers we can pull and knobs we can twist to fix these things, whether it be, again, structure of memberships, margin, obviously, And then, as far as actual like how are we delivering the client experience? How are we coaching? Is it class based? Is it one to one? And then, looking at eventually, right, and then retention tools and surveys and things like that. And then I like to, after we polish all that stuff, then hey, let's start to look at bringing more clients in. And what does a sales pipeline need to look like? What does marketing look like? And what are the lowest hanging fruits? I try to kill the lowest hanging fruits first. Let's do the things that cost the least amount of money and time that give us the greatest amount of return before we put a dollar into Meta ads, before we put a dollar into Google ads or any other marketing ventures that actually cost money. So I stick with the basics. We build on the basics. We get as far as we can, and then we start to look at maybe the next level of things once we get to a certain size.
Yeah, and you mentioned the valley of death where like people get caught or stuck. What are some of the with people you've worked with in the space, gym owners and I don't know, have you worked with people who have online coaching businesses solely?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I worked with Maddie Forberg for a couple of years.
Wow.
One, I worked with Haley Berrigan. She's got like 100,000 followers on Instagram. She had a bunch of online stuff on Train Heroic and one to one, and I've worked with a bunch of other online coaches specifically. Yeah.
Okay. What are I feel like the problems or the pain points are going to be very elementary and very basic and very persistent because again, we're coaches, not people who come in with like a business mind or expertise. What are the most common problems that people or faults that like people commit when they say, I want to start coaching, so young Zack Bartell
Mhm.
opens up his gym. It's like, what are the things that most people are going to do wrong that, having a business coach can help remediate and help remove something that feels like, oh, this is just a natural part of being a business owner.
Mhm. Well, on the gym side specifically, I think a lot of people think it's the equipment that will be flashy enough to get people in the door and make them stay. I think that's a bunch of bullshit. I think that, honestly, if you have good enough equipment, like I built my gym with Craigslist equipment. I just like patched together a bunch of stuff. I didn't have much money at all. It was the coaching, my care, my passion for clients, and my empathy and connection with people and being able to communicate properly that allowed it to be successful. So it doesn't matter what kind of equipment you have. In fact, you'll gyms could pop up next to you and then they'll have the nice newest equipment and yours is like 2 years old. And then if your coaching isn't good, they'll just go to that gym because they like their equipment better. So I don't care too much about equipment. Like equipment can always be changed. So I think that's a big mistake is they focus too much on the actual space and the flashy, cool new thing that they want to buy from Rogue and not about like the actual service like we're delivering first and foremost. I think the other mistake is treating it like a business. And when I say that, I mean that I tell people that when it comes to okay, so when it comes to business, we have a few pillars. We have obviously the service being provided, we have marketing, we have sales, and then we have retention, and then we have finance. So let's call it five pillars, whatever. And when it comes to business, it's important that each of those pillars are treated with the same respect and time that we give the actual service. So a lot of coaches are first and foremost focused mostly on the coaching aspect. They're like, I'm a coach, I want to coach, and they polish it up and they try their best to be the best coach they can be. But and then when it comes to marketing, they're like, oh shit, I need to make an Instagram post. Oh, okay. And then they through the cracks, like in between clients, they're trying to type up a post and get something online, and they're just filling cracks of time with these other pillars. And so if you're not giving your marketing or your sales stuff the same amount of respect that you are your coaching product won't grow. These other pillars feed the coaching. And the coaching can stand on its own 2 feet for a long time. I mean, I did that right with my first 68 clients. I really was more coaching focused and I sort of built my roster through referrals because I was doing a great job. But that can only get you so far. And so what I try to, a lot of the pain points that I uncover are structure based. It's how built out is our calendar? What's our time management like? Are we using our calendar to say, on Monday, I wear my marketing hat, and from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., I'm actually filming my short form videos. I'm editing them on Tuesdays, and then I'm scheduling out all my posts on Thursdays. Like, when am I reviewing my finances and my QuickBooks? Am I doing that every morning? Is it a weekly workflow? And we start to look at like where do these pillars fit in the calendar, ensuring that we're giving each pillar the time it needs to allow our business to grow. So calendar is huge. That's something that I started working on early on because I was starting to get like really anxious about all the responsibilities I had. As a business owner, we're wearing every hat. We're the janitor, we're the marketing guy, we're the coach. And so to do that effectively, that means we have to leverage our calendar and time management to the highest degree. And so a lot of it is teaching like that discipline first. I'd say honestly, if we solve that problem, we solve a lot of problems. But that's typically the biggest thing that I solve off the bat.
Yeah. And then obviously, and you mentioned in dire circumstances, maybe pull whatever lever you need to help,
Drive revenue.
patch up, yeah, like patch up some problem areas. But what are the timelines, of building a successful business? Because it seems like something that would either happen right away or take a very, very long time. And right away, it's like, oh, how do we just market more effectively? And when you talk about taking a really, really long time, it's like, well, we need to build out all the systems and processes in place to be able to make this run effective.
I think it can be fast. I mean, it obviously depends how good or bad we've built it before me. How if it's is it broken, or are there just things that need to be patched up and shored up a little bit to make it more efficient. Like I started coaching a gym in New Jersey, Adelante Barbell, and I started working with the owner Michael in like December, and they just really had like a marketing problem and a sales problem. Honestly, client experience is really good, retention metrics are really good. I was pretty impressed with where it's at. They were just kind of plateaued due to lack of sales, lack of marketing. So went in, we, talked about marketing strategy. We started running some ads and we built out a sales. So the other thing is everyone wants to start running ads without an actual sales process. Are we tracking the amount of leads we're getting in? Are we following up with them? How many touch points do we have? And what do those scripts look like? What's our prospect to client conversion rates? All these like little data points. So I don't want to run any paid advertising if we don't have the sales system built out. So these things don't take a long time. I mean, ultimately, after a call with someone that I have, my goal is I give them about 5 or 6 to-dos and actions that by the next week or the next time we meet, those can be done and killed. And most entrepreneurs I know, the best ones at least, are the ones that like just jump right in and like they might just go full focus and like hammer it all out in the next 4 hours that night, after they're done coaching. So it depends on how hard someone's willing to work, how much time they're willing to commit to those to-dos and actions. The ones that stay the same forever, the ones that procrastinate and put it off. And that to me tells me their why isn't strong enough. And that's just the hard truth. Like we all know, we've all been in a place where we procrastinate on something and we need to look at why. Like, why are we doing this? It's because we don't want to. And there's a reason why we don't want to. And that can be a lot of different reasons. That could be we're scared of what it could actually mean if we complete these things. If we grow this thing, is that what someone really wants? Or are they afraid that they won't have the time in the day to even do anything, or like what's holding them back? And so the people that are successful are the ones that crush it, give it the time, and like put in the extra work in the evenings or the mornings, early mornings to get it done. So that timeline can be pretty short. So Adelante, just give you an example, like we've increased the sales pipeline dramatically and they're crushing it. They're getting like 10 new signups a month now, where it was getting like 1 to 2 new signups a month back before me. So like that's a quick success story. There's obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say everyone experiences growth like that. I've had a lot of clients where it's taken a lot more time in the online coaching space specifically. That's very saturated. It's harder. It's just more difficult. You have to stand out more, and it's hard to stand out in a sea of other people doing this relatively the same thing, advertising on the same platforms. And so that's a little bit harder, but there's things we can do there that can take more time. So it depends, but ultimately I've seen successes happen very quickly and I've seen them take a little bit longer. A lot of the times what I find is it's usually there's a moment, like a tipping point, where it's like we do all these things, we're advertising, we're doing all the right things, and something just clicks. Something happens, whether it was a short form reel that went viral because we just finally hit it on the head, or an ad that was just perfectly targeted, or maybe even just a simple change to our form on our website. I'll give you an example. In my gym, so online, we use our lead grabs, so our forms are type form quizzes. 3 years ago, I was just on my phone on the bike warming up to work out, and I noticed I got an ad for like Invisalign, and I noticed that you can take a quiz to see which Invisalign's for you, like which one you're
Mm.
supposed to do. And I was like, wait, could I build this to where like at the time I was like, could I build this to where it pairs someone up with a coach based on their quiz results? And then I turned that into, can I build this to where it says if they're a good fit to work with us based on their quiz results? So quiz, and now you're seeing more quiz based forms. I swear I did it first in our space, but it's good. It's good. It tripled my lead volume per month. So I went from like 30 leads a month to like 90 leads a month. It just because people like quizzes. And then at the end, it's like, what's your email? Where should we send your quiz results to? Can you put in your phone number? We won't spam you, you know, things like that. There's like a tipping point where you just do like one little thing. I have a quote that I like to say that 99% of the actions you do will be meaningless, but it'll lead you to the 1% that matters. And that was the 1% for me. And we uncover that in a lot of other businesses.
Yeah, that's huge. That's super insightful. And I was thinking back to Cal Strength when they did what's your weight class quiz. It's like take the
Mm,
quiz to find out what your weight class is. And you
yeah,
realize like people just want to find out things about themselves that they feel like they don't know. Um so they're like, oh, what taking this quiz, what can I find out about myself? Like
yeah.
what don't I know? And
It's a trade of
uh
value. Yeah.
yeah, and that's super insightful. You mentioned the remote coaching space and how that would probably be more difficult because it's saturated. I also think that's probably a space where if you have a physical location, you're going to get people who are just looking for a physical gym. And that could span, people who are gym fitness, people who are competitive powerlifters, elite level weightlifters, depending on the equipment, depending on the coaches, depending on the price, etc. But I feel like you get way more people coming to your gym to say like, I just want to check it out and see if it's a good fit. Remote coaching feels like it's a lot more like pointed. It's like, I know you from this thing. I know you because of these products or your social media account or because of your success in this thing. So it's like very much like I'm seeking you out for you, not because you have equipment, not because of the location, the space. So if we transition a little bit and we think about remote coaching, which I'm sure there are probably a good handful of coaches listening to the podcast who have online businesses and they offer remote coaching services. Maybe they don't live in a highly populated area. Maybe they don't want to open a physical location. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth, the time, and the money for whatever reason. What are some strategies for developing a successful remote coaching business?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, number one is delivering the best, like outstanding service you can. You want your clients, and it goes for in person too, but honestly, online, this is more important because online, our referral network, it can be infinite. You could have a client in Massachusetts who knows someone in California, and both can, Massachusetts guy tells California guy about you, and California guy can sign up for you. When you're in a physical location, that doesn't happen, right? So we want to make sure that we're creating raving fans, ambassadors of our business within our business that market for us. And to do that, we want our clients to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm getting such a good deal. Not that they're actually getting a deal, but like I'm paying, let's say they're paying 250 a month. This is so cheap for the amount of care that I get from my coach and the amount of effort that they put in. So number one is just creating that perception of value, and to do that, not to go too long, but ultimately it's asking the clients what they want. It's surveying the clients and understanding their needs and what they want to see more of or less of, not just assuming what we're doing is what they want or assuming adding this other thing, nutrition or whatever, is actually the key because it might not be. So that's number one, is just creating raving fans. Number two is going to be positioning ourselves in a niche market, meaning not only understanding who we're serving. Do we help? Like, okay, you probably see this a lot in people Instagram bios. I coach 40-year-old dads to lose weight and gain strength using blah, 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 blah. That stuff actually works, believe it or not. Now, we don't have to be that like boring about it. It can be more straightforward, but ultimately in the online space, because there's so many other coaches, because there's so many people out there that are seeing or not seeing our stuff, we have to be very specific about who we're speaking to. And so when it comes to marketing ourselves like on social media, it's so important that when we're very intentional about our posts, we're always thinking about, who am I talking to right now? Because you want someone to see your post and say, oh my God, that's me. That's me. I was this guy. You do a before and after or like a progression with someone and you post about them. You want someone saying that, be like, I, oh my God, like I'm the guy on the left. I'm the before. I could be the after. And then they reach out to you. So we need to get super clear on who we're targeting, and we need to talk more about them and less about us. You don't matter. Like, this is tough. It's an ego buster, but like, as cool of a coach as you are, all this stuff, like, it doesn't matter. It's about who you've been able to help and who you are helping. And so when it comes to like, I was talking to Max about this on our podcast. Like, when you post client squatting, let's say it's a female client. Let's say she's squatting 150 kilos, like for three. Like that's all. That's pretty good. It's pretty freaking good. And you just throw that up there, client testimonial, cool. Look at this person, Susie just squatted this. Nobody cares. Susie cares. She thinks it's freaking cool you posted her, so she's stoked, and that does hold weight. But people want to see what was Susie squatting before she started working with you, and what were her pain points, and what was she struggling with in the gym, and then what did you guys work on together to get her there? Because they want to understand the story, and the client is the hero of the story. And so that needs to be like the marketing focus needs to be on the client's story and speaking to who you actually want to speak to. Because if we're speaking to everyone, we're speaking to no one.
Mm.
So we want to go throw the dart at the dartboard. We want to hit the bullseye of who we're talking to. And we're still going to end up signing up people that aren't just 40-year-old dads that want to lose weight. Like you're going to get other people in there, but those are like the top two, and outside of that, I think it's community. Okay. Another online coach I worked with, she actually works out at my gym too, met me there. And then it has an online coaching business that's crushing it. Her name's Aubrey. One of the things that we did was she was doing a lot of one-to-one calls. We switched the one-to-one calls to weekly community group calls with a topic and Q&A. So all of a sudden we just put hours back into her week where she's not doing as much one-to-one. And now she coaches I think it's an all-female community. Now she has a big community of all-female, lifters and people like that who get to like talk to each other, interact. She's built a team, a community of people that adds more emotional attachment to the brand, to Aubrey, to the other people, which increases accountability and retention so that they stay. So like community, building an online community in a sense, I think is a buzzword. People talk about it a lot, but like that is actually very important for online coaching retention. That's a huge key factor, I think, that can be a game changer for people who are coaching people more of in a silo in a one-to-one format. That person who's training in their garage in Massachusetts does want to feel like they're a part of a team, does want to feel like they're working out with other people that are like-minded folks. How can we create that environment for them? So those are, I would say, easy top three we could do.
Yeah, no, that's super insightful. That reminds me of, I don't know if you know who Matt Ogus is, but
Yeah.
when I got into lifting weights, it was his YouTube account Flex for All was like really popular, and
Mm,
I like forgot about it for years and years and years, and I went on his Instagram a couple of days ago, and it's I coach high income males who want to blah 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 blah, and I was like,
yeah.
yeah, that's like, now when you pick that out and you see it, you're like, oh yeah, I see that. I coach dads who I coach,
Yeah.
coach single people, I coach, whatever. So it must be effective in some capacity to be able to do that. Uh, so I guess the broader question would then be, you develop your coaching focus or foci. It's like, I coach this type of person. This is how I structure my coaching. This is how I create a community and reach out. In the online coaching space, you mentioned it being more saturated, so probably more difficult to market effectively. How could people separate themselves?
Mhm.
Because a lot of the people you also mentioned, like Maddie Forberg, huge Instagram following, like following in general. I think of people in the weightlifting space like Dylan Cooper, and the people with like tens of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands. That's probably an easier place to refine a brand and then say, and who wants to work with me? What if you don't have that reach and you want to develop it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was coaching an online coach for a while who had, very low IG following. And one of the things I told her was like, you follow a lot of fitness people and, you see a lot of their posts and then you think she was like, I'm just going to, if I post into the void, like no one's going to see my stuff. And I'm like, okay, but it's because you follow those people. The people that follow you are like friends, family, friends of family. They don't necessarily follow all those people unless they're in fitness. And so there is just because we don't have a following per se doesn't mean we can't start posting and posting value. It's all about value. And so, the key here is like Hermosi talks a lot about this with like some sort of offer or value. The key here is that we are giving value in some way. So like an easy way would be like what we would call a lead magnet. So like this could be just coming up with your 12-week meet prep guide, or for us we were doing like a powerlifting strength training guide, and then using that to then people, want the free thing, give away the free thing to get their contact, get their email, and then even run some email marketing. And so, like, email, I think, is really untapped, and a lot of online coaches don't think about it, but you own your email list. You're direct to their inbox. It's more of an intimate connection. We can structure more offers and make it pretty, and we can educate and provide more value. And so the key to standing out is providing more value without the expectation of getting a return. I call it the karma economy. Like, I believe that if I'm, even with like business coaching and stuff, like, I don't really advertise business coaching, but I talk about business a lot. I do stuff like this. I love chatting about it. And I don't do this because I'm like, oh, maybe someone will see me on this thing and then like reach out. Like, I just do it because I love to do it. And I want to provide other, people value. And I want people to experience the growth that I experience. And I hope that, things like this can help them. In the back of my mind, I know that I'm sending out a bunch of IOUs into the world. And the world's gonna like revert back to me, and I know that, like, by doing good things will happen to me. I just believe in that stuff, and even if someone doesn't, like, that's fine. But the key is it's offering value first without the expectation of a trade, and in hopes and knowing that, eventually you provide so much value to someone when it's time for them to make a decision and commit to their goals. You've been on their mind so much because you're in their email inbox, you're posting here and there. You're going to be the first one they dial up and DM. Just like you said with remote coaching, it's like they found you somewhere and you're on top of mind because you're providing value to them in some way, in some vehicle of marketing that, you didn't even maybe know that they were engaged with your content or even knew about you until they hit you up. And so it's just doing those actions and doing them over and over and over again, even without getting a result. And that's the key. And most people quit before that point. So, like, how many podcasts have you seen start up, do 5 episodes, and then you never do one again? Why? Because they're like, well, I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't get this. They weren't getting something out of it. They weren't doing it for the love of the game. Yeah, do it for the love of the game, and those are the people that'll win. And so that's, I'd say, in tangent, the key to probably standing out is it's providing the value. And then even outside of all like the social media stuff, use your own client network to generate referrals. Offer referral programs. If someone refers you a client, they get their next free month for free. Make them feel super special. Make them feel like VIPs. Things like that. Celebrating their wins, publicly in your community. Maybe sending them a free shirt or something that signifies them being with you for a year or 2 years or whatever it is. There's so many things we can do to make our clients feel special, and then they become our marketers and our salespeople for us.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And I don't know, like, I haven't checked out a bunch of, content you've happened to produce. I don't know if you've been on a ton of podcasts. I don't know how much you've created that stuff yourself. But for people listening to, you talk business and business development, specifically in the kind of remote coaching, in-person gym business space, and they think, I'd like to learn more. I'd like to maybe have a chat, consult with, or just even listen to more content you've put out, just so I can
Mhm.
get a better sense of like what your approach is, or maybe I wanted to catch up on something or miss something. Where can they go to find all that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been posting a lot of clips on my IG lately. It's just at Bartell Barbell. We've been doing the podcast for CoachLogik called Beyond Coaching, which is on the CoachLogik YouTube. And so it's me and Max. And honestly, we're talking a lot about business on there. It's kind of become a business coaching type of podcast, which again, I feel my hope is that it helps coaches grow their business and they want to utilize the CoachLogik platform to help them streamline workflow. So those are the two main spots. Someone can book me for a free call through my Calendly link in my Instagram bio. I take free calls all the time, and I have no problem helping people out for free. Again, I want to deliver value. And I always tell people, like, after that type of call, go and do those actions, come back to me when you're ready, and we'll go. Like, it's not salesy. I'm just happy to help and talk business and do what I can to help other people grow, because there's so much room in this space for that growth to happen, and it's growing rapidly. There's more people getting into these, vehicles of fitness that are barbell sports. And so there's plenty of room for success for all of us.
Yeah, awesome. And if people are interested in checking that out, just scroll to the show notes and I'll have all of it linked down below so you can click on it, sign up for a call, hit follow, listen to, the most recent episodes of the podcast. If you're interested in following me and keeping up with what I'm doing, you can go to Josh_Phil WL on Instagram. It's PHILWL. It's philosophical weightlifting everywhere else. We will catch you all on another episode of the podcast.